Hey everybody, I'm back again. Hope that the first set of videos worked well for you. Feel free to reach out if they are not, or if you have questions. A couple of you called yesterday and sent some emails with questions. Hopefully I was able to clarify that for you. I will keep communicating through email and also through Moodle, so please make sure you are checking both of those things regularly. Okay, so today's lecture is on Chapter 8, which is continuing our conversation about groups and group discussion and group communication. Specifically, we're talking about small group leadership. If you are the person who is in charge of making sure that that problem-solving group figures out what it is they're supposed to figure out. So we're going to talk a little bit about what are some guiding behaviors that you can practice as a leader of a group. Now, you can also practice these guiding behaviors even if you're not the leader of the group, but if you are the leader of the group, you should really make sure you're doing it. And when we talk about guiding behaviors basically mean behaviors that you as the leader or as the participant of a group take on to do a couple things. One, to help the group reach its goal if it's trying to solve a problem or trying to make a decision or trying to plan an event. Your guiding behaviors help steer folks toward that goal. Your guiding behaviors also help regulate discussion, making sure that discussion is going smoothly, making sure that everyone is feeling heard and understood, making sure that you're spending an appropriate amount of time on things. And then your guiding behaviors also help guide the social relationships within that group, making sure that people are being kind to one another, that people are not cutting down others' ideas, that people feel comfortable around one another. If you remember in our last lecture, we talked about primary tension and secondary tension. Your guiding behaviors help navigate through that as well. So that's what we mean by guiding behaviors. Now, if you remember when we were talking about groups, we talked about each group. One of the principles of each group is that they have two dimensions. A task dimension, which is what the group is trying to accomplish, and then the social dimension, which is how the relationships are working, how the people are enjoying or not enjoying being around each other. So as the leader of a group, you need to be thinking about both the task dimension, what do we have to get done, and the social dimension, how are we all getting along? So we break our guiding behaviors into two groups, task guiding behaviors and social guiding behaviors. So I'm going to stand over here. Let's talk about task guiding behaviors first. So here are some examples of different types of task guiding behaviors. First, requesting information. So as you are part of a discussion, one of the things that you can do as a leader is request information. Hey, we are trying to plan this event. Sophie, could you please do research and then share with us, as you're online, prices from 4 different companies that we need to rent chairs from? Can you get that information and share it with us so that we know which chair company has the sturdiest chairs for the best price? That is requesting information, getting people to talk, getting people to bring information that's necessary to accomplishing the task. One of your jobs is also to provide information. There may be some things that the group needs to know from you as the leader before they can do their job well. For example, going back, if we are planning an event together, and I am in charge of the event and I'm in charge of the group, one of the things that that group needs to know before they make plans is, what is our budget? So my job as the leader is to provide that information. We have $5,000 to work with. The group needs to know that at the beginning so that they don't plan an event that costs $10,000 and then all of a sudden I am saying, hey, we need to cut $5,000 from the budget. So you're requesting information, you're providing information, you are also clarifying information. Sometimes folks may come to the group with research or information that they've done on their own, or you may be getting information from someone outside of the group to say, hey, we really want your group to put together this event to raise money for this treatment for cancer, but you don't really understand how the treatment works. So it's going to be difficult for you to pitch that idea to people and to get them to donate money if you can't even explain the treatment. So you might have to ask your other group members to clarify the information they're bringing to the group. You might have to ask someone outside of the group to clarify some information so that your group has all the information that they need to plan well. But regardless, what you want to do is you want to make sure that this group is set up with the best and clearest information about the reason for the event or the goals that they're trying to accomplish or the problem they're trying to solve. And you want to be providing information and also making sure that you are soliciting information from your other team members that's going to help you all accomplish whatever task it is that you've set out. Okay? So requesting, providing, and clarifying information, all three very important. A lot of clarifying information might even also be saying to someone else in the group, hey, I hear what you're bringing to us, but can you help us understand why that doesn't quite make sense? It's a great way to get people talking. Fourth, guiding discussion. One of your jobs is to make sure that discussion keeps moving and doesn't get bogged down. A couple different ways that you can do that. One, having a very clear list of topics or things that need to be accomplished in a meeting, and making sure that maybe for each of those parts of the meeting, you've also set time limits. We're going to spend 10 minutes on this conversation, and then we need to make a decision and move on to the next point in our discussion. Also, guiding discussion might mean that you are saying to people who aren't speaking, hey, we haven't heard from you yet. Could I ask you to kind of weigh in because we think you might have some important things to add to the conversation? Or other folks, hey, thank you so much for all that you're doing to share at this moment, but let's also try and hear from some other people in the group. Sometimes that means that conversation will get stuck. People will come to sort of an impasse, and it's your job to say, hey, guys, we seem to be stuck on this. Can we think of just real quick, brainstorm 3 or 4 other solutions that we haven't maybe thought of yet? So your job is to keep the conversation moving and flowing, make sure that we're spending appropriate amounts of time on appropriate things, making sure that everybody is participating equally, and that we are moving toward the accomplishment of whatever that task is. Summarizing. Summarizing is also really important. A lot of times when there are lots of voices talking in the room, it can be difficult to remember everything that was said. So before you make a decision, especially, not just the final decision, but even little decisions that you're making along the way, it's your job as the leader, and we saw this in some of the role plays that I did with the stuffed animals on Tuesday or Wednesday, it's your job as the leader to say, hey, okay, everyone, we've been talking about this point. Here's what I think I heard. A, you said this. B, you said this. C, you felt this way. And then I heard us all saying that we think the best solution is X. Is that correct? So there's a lot of summarizing to make sure that as the group is conversing and throwing around lots of ideas, that nothing is getting lost, that you're preserving all of the best information, all of the best energy that's come to the group, and making sure that everyone's ideas are being heard and stewarded into whatever the final decision is. That's summarizing. Analyzing evidence and reasoning. If you all are trying to figure out how to solve a problem in the community, for example, and let's say you're trying to figure out how to improve litter control in the parks. You're on a task force for that. A lot of different people are going to be coming with information to you. The government may be bringing some information saying, here are the statistics from how dirty the parks are. You might interview folks who go to the parks, families, and say, hey, what are you all seeing? What are you all observing? You might talk to several different waste companies who are saying, here are the types of trash receptacles or recycling bins we can put in the park. You're going to have a ton of information coming from you. One of your jobs as the leader is to help analyze evidence and reasoning. Now, not everybody who's going to be bringing evidence and bringing reasoning to you is going to have equally good information. So one of your jobs as the leader of the group is to say, this source seems reliable and credible. This source maybe doesn't seem as reliable. This person has only ever been to one of our 15 parks. So do they really have as much input or insight as someone who has visited all 15 of the parks regularly? Or, hey, here is a company who is offering to place trash and recycling receptacles in our parks. But we're looking, their list of companies, they've only ever done this sort of stuff at amusement parks. They don't really seem to have a ton of experience with just natural parks. So is their evidence and is their reasoning the most sound reasoning, or should we go with another company who has put these types of receptacles in natural parks before? That's what we mean by analyzing evidence and reasoning, helping your group sift through all the mountains of evidence and information to decide which is the best, which is the most reliable. And last, negotiating. As we talked in our lecture the other day, secondary tension happens in the conflict phase of group dynamics. So if you remember, we went orientation, conflict, emergence, and then, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the last one right now. Well, whatever the last one is, where we kind of come to a decision. It's not consensus, it's reinforcement. So in that step of conflict, if you remember, we talked about secondary tensions when people's ideas start to bump up against each other and there begins to be conflict in the group. One of your jobs as the leader, as part of your task guiding behaviors, is to help negotiate, is to help say, hey, we seem to be stuck here. A, what if you maybe kind of gave a little bit on this idea? And B, what if you maybe gave a little bit on this idea? Helping your group work through that conflict phase so that they start to move into the emergence phase where a final sort of solution can come about. So that is our task guiding behaviors. There are a lot more, but that's the gist. Requesting info, providing info, clarifying info, guiding discussion, summarizing, analyzing evidence and reasoning, and negotiating. Now, we also have some social guiding behaviors. The social guiding behaviors are the guiding behaviors that you as the leader are doing to help kind of the relationships in the group work nicely and kind of move collectively. First, encouraging. Very simply, guys, we're doing great here. Let's keep working. Or, hey, I'm so glad that you all have come. Thank you for bringing all this different research that I asked you to bring at this meeting. Or, guys, I feel really great about this solution that we have come to. Thank you for working hard. Your job is to basically be a cheerleader, a kind of rah-rah person for the group and the work that you all are doing together as a group. That can be encouraging people collectively as the whole group. That can also be encouraging people individually. Hey, I noticed that last time you were here at the meeting, you really didn't want to speak up much. I really appreciate you speaking up this time. I hear your voice. You've brought some great insights to the group. Expressing feelings. Sometimes, as we all know, when we're in meetings interacting with people, our feelings start to come into it. Even if we want to be neutral, even if we know that someone wasn't trying to hurt our feelings, something happens in the meeting that kind of rubs us the wrong way. So one of your jobs as the leader with social guiding behaviors is to create a safe space for expressing feelings. First off, that means being very in tune with what's going on with yourself. So sometimes it's not a bad thing to say, guys, I am really kind of exhausted at this moment. I think we maybe just need a 5 or 10 minute break so that we can all just cool off a little bit. That also might be, guys, I'm a little bit scared and nervous right now. I'm realizing that I'm anxious about this decision we have to make. It's a big decision, and I just want to put that out on the table. First, that makes you relatable as the leader, and it's also very honest. But what it also does is it creates a safe space for everybody else in the room to kind of say, whew, yeah, you're right. Let's just check our emotions because our fear or our anger or our sadness or sometimes even our excitement can get in the way of us making the best task decisions. So let's just make sure we're aware of our feelings. We don't need to deny them, but we don't need to get carried away with them. In addition to being aware of your own feelings, you also want to be aware of what's going on in the group around you. So sometimes you might notice some unspoken tension at the table, and it might be your job to say, hey, is everybody okay right now? I sense like there might be some weird energy in the room. Is there anything we need to clarify and move past with each other so that we can be more productive? And maybe that means that there need to be some people saying like, I'm sorry, that hurt my feelings, or that rubbed me the wrong way. And then other people saying, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that to happen. But it's your job to kind of watch the emotional health of the group and make sure that the emotions are weighing in properly in terms of getting things done, and also not just kind of upending the whole meeting. So that's expressing feelings. Harmonizing. Harmonizing is similar to negotiating, but think of it this way. If negotiating is trying to help people make their different ideas and their different opinions mesh together, harmonizing is more about trying to make their personalities and their feelings mesh together. So it could be, hey, guys, that last exchange felt really, really, really intense. Can we just take a moment to kind of tell each other how much we appreciate each other being in this group, and even though that discussion got a little heated, let's just check in and make sure that we're okay. So harmonizing is exactly what it sounds like, making sure that there is still harmony in the group. And then last, energizing. Sometimes, as you all know from our class, people come in and they're just like, I got nothing, I'm tired. Your job as a leader is to make sure that people get up and at 'em, have energy for the task ahead. So that might mean taking a pause in a meeting, getting everybody up on their feet, doing 20 jumping jacks, sending them out in the hall to get a drink and go to the bathroom. When you start to notice that energy is flagging in your meeting, it's your job as the leader to pep it up again, or give them a break, or sometimes energizing can also mean, hey, I know that we said that we were going to do this in the meeting today and we were going to try and accomplish this much, but I think we've now reached a point where we're just not going to get any further because people's brains are checked out or their feelings are hurt and we're toast. Sometimes energizing can mean, let's take a pause, we'll come back to this at our next meeting and we'll pick up there. And you then preserve the goodwill of the group so that when you start next time and people are more fresh, they can come back to some of those conversations that they got stuck in with just a freer mind, clearer heart, kind of better energy. So those are some of our social guiding behaviors: encouraging, expressing feelings, harmonizing, and energizing. Okay, now we're going to scoot over here. Whoop. Isn't this fun? Let's talk about some different leadership styles. There are 3 different types of leadership styles. There are probably more, but for our purposes today, we're going to talk about 3 different types of leadership styles. And you're going to notice that these leadership styles, in some respects, correspond to the conversation that we had on Tuesday about different types of decision-making methods. If you remember, there were a couple different ones. So we had like decision by the leader, decision by majority rule, decision by arbitration, decision by consensus, and I think the 5th was decision by compromise. So these sort of correspond. First, the first type of leadership style is autocratic. And the best way to think about autocratic is just to think of very strong, decisive leader who makes the decisions. Sometimes this is called a dictatorship, but autocratic doesn't always have to be bad. When we say dictatorship, we think of countries where people have no freedom and are prohibited from kind of doing things that they want to do. So that's not what we're talking about. Autocratic just means a very strong central leader at the top of the chain who makes decisions. Will often kind of listen to all of the opinions, kind of listen to input, listen to conversation, but at the end of the day, he or she is the one to kind of pull the trigger and make the decision. There's a lot of power gathered in a central place. So what's good about this is if you have a very wise, smart, intelligent, powerful person in that position, it can be great. The leader can run things with an iron fist, take care of things, and make sure that everything happens as it should. And they tend to do a great job if they are of that personality. If you have someone in that position who does not have those skills, it can be a real mess when you're depending on them. You have lots of bad decisions being made. A lot of times, like I said, you see this person turn into a dictator or a tyrant. You've probably been in meetings where someone runs the meeting with a very firm hand, and even though there are other people at the meeting having opinions and conversation and discussion, the leader isn't really interested in listening to those things at all. It's never fun to be in a meeting where you're hoping that you will be heard and someone is just kind of telling everybody what to do. The nice thing about an autocratic leader, though, is that things generally take a little bit shorter. You don't end up being in a meeting that goes for 2 hours because autocratic leaders are generally pretty good at running meetings and keeping to agenda. So there are positive and negative about both of those. Another leadership style is democratic. A democratic leader is someone who is able to hear lots of different voices and begin to synthesize all of those bits of information to kind of lead people to a sort of majority decision or even consensus. So the democratic leader says, yes, I am going to facilitate this conversation. I'm going to facilitate this group. But at the end of the day, the decisions that are made by the group have to come from all of us, not just from me. What's great about this leadership style is that this leader really knows how to figure out what the different skills and talents of everyone in the group are and kind of bring and call those things out. People generally also feel very heard by a democratic leader. They feel like they have ownership in the decisions that were made, ownership in whatever was accomplished. Sometimes what can be bad about democratic, though, is if there are too many different opinions and there are too many people moving in different directions, there's no kind of central leader to just kind of say, okay, discussion has to stop. It needs to end right now. Since we are kind of stuck, I will move us forward. So sometimes democracy can be, and democratic groups can be a little messy in that they tend to kind of ramble and meander and maybe don't get exactly where we want them to get. The other thing with democratic is that sometimes there will still be some voices that feel left out of the final decision. Last type of leader is a fancy French word called laissez-faire. Laissez-faire basically translates to mean kind of like hands-off or let them do what they want kind of thing. I don't want you to think as like a lazy leader who just sits back and doesn't do anything. That is just not a leader. That's not what we're talking about here. Laissez-faire is a type of leadership that strives to get a whole bunch of really talented people in a room. Maybe people who are leaders in their own companies or their own businesses or their own meeting places, and bring them together and trust that all of the amazing energy and talents and skills that are combined in a room will now somehow find a way to lead themselves. So a laissez-faire leader is more concerned with, how do I get the right people in the room? How do I create an environment that allows them to have good discussion? How do I give them all the resources they need to make a decision? And then how do I kind of move back and let them do their thing? A laissez-faire leader is really good at not getting in the way of other people who are really talented and skilled, but still giving them everything they need so that they emerge at a really good decision. As you can probably tell, this is a very difficult type of leadership because it requires a lot of intuition, a lot of ability to watch and provide what people need while still having a very light hand and not getting too hands-on. Laissez-faire leaders are usually really successful when they have a bunch of really creative type people in the room. So a lot of laissez-faire leaders work in the arts, actually. I do this a lot as a director. I provide a script, I hire really talented actors, and then I say, go. And every once in a while, I'm going to pop in and kind of like maybe shape that thing you're doing in that scene or make a different suggestion for a light cue. But largely, I'm going to just put a bunch of talented people in a room, give them a good script, give them a few rules and parameters, and then see what they do. Obviously, the unsuccessful laissez-faire leader, things just go haywire. Since you have so many leaders in your room, you end up having everybody trying to be the leader and battling for power and control, and nobody being a clear leader. So that's where laissez-faire gets pretty dangerous and not quite helpful. So those are our three different types of leadership styles. It'd be fun to think a little bit about where you most easily fit based on some of your skills and aptitudes and talents and personality and temperament. All right, we're going to move one more time. We're going down here. Travel with me. All right. Trying to do this all in one take today. We'll see how it works. Okay, that looks good. Your book has a really great section where it has about 20 different steps or tips for effective small group leadership. I can trust you to read, and I do not need to go through each of those. But I want you to be familiar with those things. And what I've done is I've picked out a few that I just want to highlight and make sure that we do specifically understand. So these are some of the tips for effective meetings and leading them effectively. I'm going to go over here. First, make sure that whenever you are leading a meeting, you prepare an agenda. An agenda is sort of a schedule and list of things that you want to try and get accomplished in the meeting. Anytime you go in a meeting and you don't have a plan, you can guarantee that that meeting is not going to be successful. So prepare an agenda. In an ideal world, if you can send that agenda 1 week before the meeting, So you know who's coming? Send it out. Let people know what you're going to be discussing. That gives people a chance to prepare. That gives them a chance to gather their information that you're requesting that they bring. If they have tasks or research that they were supposed to do before this meeting, that reminds them and gives them a prompt that they need to do it. If you get that agenda complete and you get that agenda out a week before the meeting itself will be way more successful and way more productive than if people are showing up not knowing what is trying to be accomplished, what you're trying to get done. They haven't had time to prepare. Also, in that agenda, ideally you want to have 4 to 6 items of business, meaning don't try and do more than 4 to 6 things per meeting because you'll end up spending way too little time on each of them. Or if you only have 2 agenda items, you'll spend a really long time kind of running in circles about the same topic. So in an ideal world, trying to get 4 to 6 items of business. And in this agenda, you say, this is what we're covering. We're covering 4 topics. It's a 2-hour meeting. Our first topic is going to take 20 minutes. Our second topic, because it's bigger, is going to take 40 minutes. Now we're at an hour. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we have 50 minutes left. Each of these last 2 topics will take 25 minutes each. Be that specific. That is part of your guiding behavior of guiding the discussion. Arrive 10 to 15 minutes early. You need to be there early to get the room for the meeting set up. You want to arrange chairs, you want to arrange lighting, you want to arrange ventilation. So to do that, you need to be there at least 10 to 15 minutes early so that you can set up the physical environment to best accomplish what it is that you need to accomplish. You see me do this in class sometimes. If we have a million chairs in here and we're trying to give speeches, you notice me taking out the last 2 rows of chairs because I want you in the first couple rows as you're listening to your classmates speaking, because I feel like you are more attentive audience members. And when you're closer, you give better feedback that actually helps the people who are up here speaking. Also, if you're there 10 or 15 minutes early, that allows you to be in place to greet people as they come in the door. That gives you a chance to immediately figure out as people come in the door, who's in what kind of mood tonight, what type of energy are they bringing in the room, who might I have to guide a little stronger tonight, who's here and energized and ready to go. It just gives you a little bit of a litmus test to figure out how are my group members doing, what do I need to be aware of before we start the meeting. Begin on time and don't start for latecomers. And don't stop for latecomers. If you are in charge of the meeting, your number one task is to make sure that you are using time well. We've all been in places where our time is being wasted and we all know how much that stinks and we usually hate it. So begin on time and do not stop for latecomers. If you stop for latecomers and you recap, you are now disrespecting the other people who were there on time. You see this in class all the time with me. I start on time. I hand back things to people if they come in late, but it's their job to catch me for what they missed. You have to honor. And if you stop for latecomers, the message that you send to them is it's okay to be late, and they will keep being late. If you start on time and they start missing important tidbits, I guarantee they'll start showing up on time after that. State objectives and time limits. For each of the points in your agenda, make sure you are clear. At the end of this section of conversation, guys, we need to have come to a decision about X. Or, guys, at the end of these 45 minutes, tonight, we don't have to make a decision, but I would like us to have brainstormed as many possible options as possible, and then we'll go home after this meeting and we can all think about these options, and next meeting we'll make a decision. Whatever it is you're trying to accomplish in each section of the meeting, it's your job to say to people, here's what we're trying to do, and also here's what we're not trying to do, because sometimes people will want to try and do things that we're not trying to do, and then to say time limits. We have 20 minutes to come up with 3 good solutions, but we don't have to make a decision tonight. That kind of thing. Be very, very, very clear. The clearer you are, and the more you stick to those objectives and those time limits, the more successful the meeting will be. Summarize often. Make sure that you and the leader in each of these sections, so if we're still talking about 4 agenda items, at the beginning of that agenda item, state the objective and the time limit. At the end of that objective, I'm trying to do this backwards. At the end of that agenda item, summarize. Okay, guys, before we move on to the second agenda item, please let me summarize what we just talked about. I heard this, I heard this, I heard this, I heard this. These are the 3 options we came to. We're all going to take these 3 options home, and when we come back next week, we'll be ready to vote about which of these options we like best. Am I clear? Did I get that right? Are we all on the same page? Yes, great. Now we move on. Make sure you're summarizing. And last but not least, end on time. Do not keep people there later. Or if you are in the middle of a particularly engaging discussion and everyone is really excited and they're having a good conversation and they really want to keep conversing, then just ask that question. Hey, guys, our meeting was supposed to go from 8 to 10 tonight. It's 10 o'clock right now, but it feels like we have really good energy and traction. Are we all okay staying 10 more minutes to finish this? Yes, 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 yes. Okay, let's keep going. No, you can't. Okay, guys, great. Let's pause. Let's come back. Ending on time is important. So a lot of this stuff is about clarity, right? Being clear about what you're trying to accomplish a week before so people know that they can be prepping. Trying to focus in on 4 to 6 items so you're not trying to do too much. Getting in the room, preparing, making sure the room is set, allowing yourself to get a sense for what type of mood people are in, and then beginning on time, and for each of those agenda items, stating objectives and time limits and summarizing before we move on, and then ending on time. There's a lot more good information in this chapter on some effective leadership tips, but those are the ones that I really wanted to highlight for you now. That is the end of the lecture. Make sure you read the rest of the kind of information on the sheet for today's lecture. Also, please make sure you are looking to see next week if you are giving a speech and that you respond to me and let me know how it is you would like me to contact you so that I can watch and evaluate your speech. Again, if you have any questions, you've got my number, you've got email. Always reach out. I hope you're not going too crazy, and I hope you all are happy and healthy. Feel free to keep reaching out if you need anything. Okay? Bye-bye now.